1,500 criminals freed. 327 violent assaults erased, 89 fraudsters pardoned. And today, live before the entire nation. Jasmine Crockett stares down Donald Trump, the man she calls the most pro-criminal president in history. The chamber explodes, protesters roar, and for 37 frozen seconds, Trump is left speechless. If justice is gasping for air today, will America fight back or surrender? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. The screen flickers, then steadies today. America holds its breath. The U.S. Capitol isn't just a building anymore. It has become an arena where truth and power collide. Every major network is live, every eye in the nation fixed on one room. Some tune in with hope, others with rage, but all with the same question: will justice survive this day? At the center of the chamber sits Donald Trump, shoulders back, lips curled into that familiar smirk he wears like armor. He looks untouchable, as if the chaos of pardons, scandals, and criminal allies has never once grazed him. To his supporters, he's a savior. To his critics, a tyrant. Cameras zoom in, every twitch of his face magnified for millions watching. Then heels strike marble, the sound echoes like a countdown to judgment. Jasmine Crockett enters, her posture is rigid, her jaw tight, her eyes locked on Trump like a hawk eyeing prey. In her hand is a thick black file to file. Inside are the names, crimes, and faces of 1,500 convicted criminals freed by Trump's pen. Murderers, drug lords, fraudsters, even January 6th insurrectionists who beat police officers bloody. She isn't just carrying paper. She's carrying the weight of every victim silenced by those pardons, and the nation can feel it. She doesn't bother with pleasantries. Her voice detonates across the chamber. Donald Trump, you are the most pro-criminal president of my lifetime. The words slice through the air like glass, sharp enough to draw blood. Gasps ripple from one end of the room to the other. Democrats lean forward with clenched fists. Republicans shift uncomfortably, some scowling, others avoiding eye contact with the cameras. Trump leans back, smirk widening, but the mask is thin. Jasmine steps closer, raising the file high before slamming it down on the desk with a crack that ricochets like a gunshot. Pages scatter across polished wood. Names stare back in black ink proof no spin can erase. She snatches one sheet, reading aloud. Andrew Tate arrested for assaulting women 2 weeks after Trump freed him. Another page. Ross Ulbricht, the drug lord who built an empire of heroin and meth on the Silk Road. Another. Rod Blagojevich, 17 counts of corruption, trying to sell a Senate seat, rewarded with freedom. Each name is a blow, each detail a nail in the coffin of Trump's self-proclaimed toughness on crime. The chamber is electric. Every word Jasmine fires is amplified by the silence that follows. Millions of Americans lean closer to their screens, pulses racing. Social media explodes in real time. Hashtag Crockett vs. Trump surges to the top, alongside hashtag pro-criminal president. Outside the Capitol, chants rise, lock him up, lock him up. Their voices bleed into the chamber like thunder. Trump shifts forward, ready to interrupt, but Jasmine cuts him off before he can even inhale. You stand here claiming to protect America from criminals, yet you open the gates for the worst of them. Tell me, Mr. Trump, who were you protecting, the people or yourself? Her words hang in the air, heavy and unrelenting. For a brief, shocking second, the man who never stops talking sits silent, his lips pressed thin, his knuckles white against the desk. Millions hold their breath, waiting. And Jasmine drives the knife deeper, her voice low but searing. If justice itself is on trial today, who will defend it? Trump leans forward, smirk curling wider, as if Jasmine's words were nothing more than static no's. He chuckles into the microphone, a low, mocking laugh that echoes like nails scraping metal. Look at this, he sneers, gesturing toward Jasmine with a dismissive flick of his hand. Another Democrat puppet, reading a script, desperate for attention. Without me, she's nothing. His supporters in the gallery clap, but the sound is thin, nervous, failing to drown out the tension building in the chamber. He straightens his tie, his voice swelling with false bravado. I alone know how to stop crime. I alone have the courage to do what the weak would never dare. That's why they fear me, because I am the only one who can protect America. His words reverberate, polished like the greatest hits from his rallies. And in that instant, The scene fractures, flashes of rallies flood the screen, roaring crowds in red caps chanting law and order. Over and over, fists pumping the air, their devotion feverish. It feels like a cult chant rising from the past, pressing against the present moment like a phantom army standing behind him. But Jasmine doesn't flinch. She leans into her microphone, voice slicing through the illusion like lightning tearing through smoke. Protect America, her words sting with steel. Is that what you call it when you freed Andrew Tate, an influencer accused of trafficking women across continents? Is that what you call it when you gave Ghislaine Maxwell, the recruiter of Jeffrey Epstein's victims, the privilege of a softer prison? Or when you opened the gates for Ross Ulbricht, the man who built an empire on heroin and meth? The chamber stiffens. Cameras swing from Jasmine back to Trump. He opens his mouth to interrupt, but something shifts in the air. A wave of murmurs ripples through the gallery. Even the reporters pause their frantic scribbling. Truth, spoken so plainly, carves through the nose like a knife. For the first time, Trump's bravado seems to stumble, his smirk trembles, his jaw clenches. Lies, he barks suddenly, pounding the desk with his fist. Fake news, every single word fake. His voice cracks, rising louder, desperate, clawing at the air as if volume could shield him from fact. He tries to talk over Jasmine, drowning her with the roar he once used to command stadiums, but the chamber is not a rally. The chamber has rules, the chamber has eyes. The chamber has a conscience. The gavel slams down. Order. The presiding chair's voice cuts sharp, silencing the chaos. And in that silence, Jasmine stands taller, her face unwavering, her presence like fire against his storm. Her voice lowers, each word dripping with deliberate weight. No matter how loud you shout, Mr. Trump, lies cannot bury truth. And the truth is this: you were never the protector of America, you were the protector of criminals. The words hit like thunder, vibrating in every corner of the Capitol. Outside, the protesters grow louder, their chants clashing in a storm of rage and hope. Inside, Trump grips the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles turn bone white. Millions watching at home can see it beneath the bluster, beneath the roar. There's fear flickering in his eyes. And Jasmine leans in, her voice almost a whisper, yet cutting sharper than any scream. What happens, Mr. Trump, when your lies collide with a truth too undeniable to escape? Outside the Capitol, the air vibrates like a battlefield. On one side, MAGA supporters wave red flags, chanting USA, USA, until their throats burn. On the other, pro-justice demonstrators roar back, fists in the air, voices unrelenting. Lock him up! Lock him up! The chants collide, a wall of fury slamming against stone, rattling windows inside the chamber. Police stand between the two sides, shields up, but even they look unsettled, as though the line holding America together could snap at any moment. News helicopters circle overhead, their cameras capturing the chaos from above. Every network scrolls the same headline across screens: Crockett vs. Trump, the clash of the century. Commentators scramble to frame the narrative, some painting Jasmine as a fearless warrior, others smearing her as an angry radical. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok ignite in a storm of hashtags, memes, live streams. Clips of her slamming Trump with the protector of criminals have already gone viral, replayed millions of times in less than an hour. The whole world is watching, dissecting every glare, every silence, every word. Inside, Jasmine feels the weight of that world pressing on her shoulders. She grips the edge of her file, steadying herself. Her gaze drops for a moment, not to retreat, but to remember. In her mind flash the faces of those she has fought for. The grandmother who stood in line for 8 hours to vote in Texas because polling sites were stripped away. The young black man falsely accused and shackled before he even saw a lawyer. The children whose futures shrink each time schools in minority neighborhoods are gutted of funding. Their voices echo within her, louder than the chaos outside, stronger than the jeers from Trump's defenders. A montage sweeps across the screen, as if the nation itself is remembering with her. Jasmine at a courthouse in Dallas, raising her voice against voter suppression. Jasmine at a rally, marching shoulder to shoulder with families demanding police accountability. Jasmine on the House floor, her words trembling but fierce as she confronted systemic racism head-on. Each image pulses with fire, a reminder that she is not standing here for herself. She is standing for millions who have been silenced, erased, ignored. Back in the chamber, Her eyes meet Trump's again. And this time, there's no smirk left. He can hear the crowd too. He can feel the nation's eyes turning, judging, weighing every pardon, every decision that left America's streets more dangerous. The noise outside swells like a storm pounding at the gates. But inside, a deeper silence stretches. Every lawmaker, every reporter, every citizen watching knows the stakes have shifted. This isn't just a skirmish between two politicians, it's the reckoning of an era. Jasmine exhales, her voice steady as she speaks, not just to Trump, not just to Congress, but to every living room, every phone screen, every heart across America. This fight is not about me. It is about who we are as a nation, and what kind of future we choose to leave our children. And as the crowd outside roars louder, drowning out even the sound of the Capitol's bells, one question pierces through the noise, lingering in every mind, impossible to ignore. Whose voice will echo louder, the fury in the streets or the truth inside these walls? The chamber holds its breath as Jasmine lifts the thick file again. Tapers tremble slightly in her grip, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the truth about to be unleashed. She opens the folder with deliberate precision, the crack of the metal fasteners echoing like a starter's pistol. The nation braces, her eyes narrow, her voice, low but cutting, pierces through the silence. Let us begin with January 6th. She reads aloud the name of a rioter sentenced for beating officers with a flagpole, his knuckles blooded as he screamed for the Capitol's fall. 6 years behind bars until Donald Trump signed his freedom. A gasp ripples across the chamber. She doesn't pause. Another name follows. This one had hurled fire extinguishers at police, leaving 2 officers hospitalized. For years erased with a stroke of Trump's pen. The gallery erupts in murmurs. Even through cameras, millions at home can feel their stomachs turn. She flips the page. Ross Ulbricht, founder of Silk Road, a digital empire that sold heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, billions in poison shipped across America. Serving life without parole, until Donald Trump freed him unconditionally. Gasps deepen into shocked silence. The weight of it presses on every chest. Families of overdose victims, watching from their homes, clutch photographs tighter. Trump leans back, forcing a chuckle, a little exaggerated. Don't you think? He was just an entrepreneur. A few of his allies laugh nervously, but the sound dies quickly. The absurdity of it hangs in the air, exposed for what it is: mockery of grief. Jasmine slams the next page down. Andrew Tate used a metal whip and bear spray against officers here, at this very Capitol. Bragged about it online, sentenced to 6 years. 2 weeks after Trump's pardon, arrested in Texas soliciting a minor for sex, gasps become cries of outrage. A senator covers his mouth, another shakes her head in disbelief. Cameras zoom in on Trump, his face stiffens, jaw clenched. Another page. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's partner, convicted of trafficking and grooming girls as young as 14. She was transferred, against policy, to a low-security facility after Donald Trump's administration intervened. Murmurs break into open shouts. A woman in the gallery bursts into tears. The chamber feels less like Congress, more like a courtroom delivering a verdict. Jasmine keeps going. Fraudsters, thieves, corrupt politicians, each name lands like a hammer, each crime staining the air with shame. Todd and Julie Chrisley, flaunting stolen wealth on television. Trevor Milton, pushing a fake truck downhill to swindle investors out of millions, rewarded with a pardon after donating to Trump's campaign. Every revelation draws the noose tighter around his image of law and order. Trump forces another laugh. Weaker now, they were misunderstood good people, treated unfairly, but no one laughs with him. The silence is suffocating, heavy, absolute. For the first time, his bravado falters. The swagger he wears like a shield looks cracked, dented by truth. Jasmine lowers the file, her eyes boring into him. Her voice softens, but it carries more power than a scream. How long can bravado survive against a mountain of evidence, Mr. Trump? How long before the weight of these names crush the mask you hide behind? Trump straightens in his seat, the smirk snapping back onto his face like a mask hastily reapplied. His voice booms through the microphone, filled with bravado. What you call pardons, I call acts of mercy. America is a nation of second chances. These people were victims of a corrupt system. I gave them freedom. He spreads his hands theatrically, as though he were a benevolent king bestowing favors upon the undeserving masses. His words hang heavy, And for a fleeting second, some in the chamber wonder if he still believes them himself. But he isn't finished. He pivots sharply, eyes narrowing, voice dripping venom. The real criminals, they sit on that side of the aisle, Democrats. Crook politicians, Hunter Biden, with his laptop of horrors. Illegals pouring across our border, flooding our cities with drugs and crime. You dare point fingers at me when your house is built on rot. The crowd of MAGA loyalists in the gallery cheers, clapping and stamping their feet. Cameras catch their faces red with fury, veins bulging as they shout shame, shame, toward Jasmine and her allies. Then, like a flash of gunfire, Marjorie Taylor Greene shoots up from her seat. Her voice pierces the air, shrill, unrelenting. This is a witch hunt. President Trump saved this country. He doesn't owe an apology, he deserves a thank you. She pounds her fist against the desk, her words echoing through the chamber as if trying to drown the truth with sheer volume. For a moment, it feels as though order itself is slipping, the chamber bending toward chaos. But Jasmine Crockett doesn't flinch. She waits for the noise to subside, her silence a weapon sharper than any scream. Then she leans forward, her voice low, razor-edged, each word cutting through the noise. Mercy. Mercy for men who beat police officers with iron rods until blood ran on these very steps. Mercy for fraudsters who stole millions from hardworking Americans. Mercy for child traffickers who preyed on the innocent. Her voice rises now, thunderous, her fury laced with grief. Do not speak to me of mercy. You turned it into a currency for loyalty. You sold justice to the highest bidder. The chamber erupts. Democrats pound their desks in approval, their shouts colliding with the jeers from Trump's defenders. Reporters scribble so frantically that their pens snap. The presiding chair slams the gavel again and again, the sound cracking like gunshots, shouting order. Order. But order is nowhere to be found. It feels as though the walls themselves are vibrating with the rage of a nation tearing in two. Trump tries to shout over the chaos, his voice rising, his face red, veins bulging at his temples. But every time he speaks, Jasmine's words still hang in the air, heavier, undeniable, echoing louder than his bluster. The cameras catch the moment his fury against her resolved to forces colliding like tectonic plates, shaking the ground beneath them. And in the middle of the storm, Jasmine leans in, her voice steady, unwavering, her eyes fixed on him like a blade pressed to his throat. When truth is shouted down, Mr. Trump, will courage rise higher, or will your empire of lies finally collapse under its own weight? The gavel's echo still hangs in the chamber when Jasmine lifts another page from her file. Her tone drops, calm but lethal, like a blade sliding from its sheath. Andrew Tate, she begins, her eyes drilling into Trump. Freed by you, pardoned as if his violence meant nothing. And what did he do with your so-called mercy? Days later he assaulted women in Texas. Your decision put predators back on the streets. The chamber stills, the words land with the weight of a guillotine blade. Gasps erupt, some audible curses cut the silence, but Jasmine doesn't waver. She lets the name hang there, raw and undeniable, while cameras swing instantly to Trump's face. The smirk is gone, his jaw tightens, he opens his mouth, a reflexive habit born of decades of bluster, but the sound never comes. His lips part, then close again, the chamber waits. Millions of Americans lean closer to their screens, eyes locked, waiting for the man who never stops talking to summon his weapon words. But nothing comes. Seconds pass. 1, 2, 5. His fingers drum nervously on the desk, then stop. His eyes dart sideways, searching for a lifeline, but none of his allies dare interrupt. Not Marjorie Taylor Greene, not Jim Jordan, not even the loyalists in the gallery. They all sit frozen, watching the unthinkable unfold. By 10 seconds, the hush is suffocating. The air feels heavier, as though gravity itself has doubled inside the chamber. By 15, whispers break out, journalists murmuring to one another, cameras clicking, pens racing to capture history in ink. By 25, the silence feels deafening, louder than any word he's ever commanded at a rally. Outside the Capitol, the crowd senses it. Pro-justice demonstrators surge against the barricades, their chants slicing through the glass like thunder. Justice, justice, justice. Their voices grow louder, synchronizing into a single demand that reverberates through the marble walls. Across the street, Trump supporters try to rally, but their chants falter. drowned out by the tidal wave of the word he fears most: justice. At 30 seconds, pundits whisper in studios across America. This could be the turning point. Analysts lean forward, astonished. The man who built his empire on noise, on spectacle, on never letting silence touch him, is crumbling in plain sight. By 37 seconds, the nation sees him differently. Not untouchable, not uncheckable, not invincible. For 37 agonizing seconds, Donald Trump is simply a man caught in the wreckage of his own choices, stripped of words, stripped of swagger, stripped of the myth he built around himself. Jasmine leans into her microphone, her eyes locked on him, her voice steady but searing. For once, America doesn't need your answer. Your silence is the answer. And as the chants outside swell, shaking the very stone of the Capitol, the only question left for a nation holding its breath is this: what happens when even the loudest voice has nothing left to say? The silence still lingers when Trump suddenly lunges for his last weapon, not truth, but spectacle. He signals to his aides, and within seconds, giant monitors flicker to life around the chamber. Grainy footage appears, chopped together in a blur of headlines and images. Trump's voice booms. Here's your hero, America. Jasmine Crockett, caught in corruption, exposed in scandal. The video is chaos, a montage of out-of-context clips, her words sliced mid-sentence to twist their meaning. Old courtroom footage cut with misleading captions. Grainy images, protests, where she marched blurred into scenes of riots she never attended. A doctored clip flashes Jasmine taking donations, edited to look like bribes shoved into her hands. The screen blares. Crockett, radical, corrupt, dangerous. For a moment, the chamber gasps. Right-wing media, waiting like wolves, pounce instantly. Across America, Fox News breaks in with the Chiron bombshell scandal. Crockett caught. Social media accounts aligned with Trump flood the internet with hashtags #CrookedCrockett, #puppet on strings. Bots swarm comment sections, memes spread like wildfire. The smear machine roars to life, drowning screens in noise. Trump leans back, satisfied, his grin returning. You see, she accuses me, but she's the real criminal. They don't tell you the truth about her. I will. His voice swells, echoing with the bravado of a man who believes lies can outweigh silence. His allies cheer, clapping their desks, pounding their fists, desperate to resurrect the momentum he lost in those 37 seconds. But Jasmine doesn't move, she doesn't flinch. She waits until the cheers begin to falter, until the sound feels hollow. Then she steps forward, her voice calm but cutting like a scalpel. Play it again, louder. The chamber stirs. Trump's grin flickers, the video replays, blaring the same fabricated montage. Jasmine raises her hand, signaling for quiet. Look closer, she commands. She points at the screen. Timestamps missing. Audio glitches obvious. Shadows cut at awkward angles or edit slice truth into lies. This is not evidence, this is manipulation. Fake shadows, fabricated words, cheap editing. And yet this is what he offers instead of an answer. The audience murmurs, some leaning in, squinting at the screens. On Twitter, fact-checkers explode. Frame by frame analyzes spreading within minutes. Hashtags flip. #Crockett truth begins trending, countering the storm. Reporters shake their heads, whispering, it's a cut-and-paste job. Jasmine lifts the thick file again, slamming it onto the desk so hard the sound cracks through the chamber. Here is what cannot be edited. 1,500 names, real crimes, real victims. Pages soaked in truth, not pixels bent into lies. She holds up a page with Andrew Tate's name in bold, then another with Ross Ulbricht, another with Ghislaine Maxwell. Each sheet a dagger, each name undeniable. The crowd shifts. The roar of propaganda weakens under the weight of raw fact. Even some in Trump's own gallery exchange uneasy looks, the certainty in their eyes cracking. Trump glares, his face flushed, gripping the desk as though it were the last thing anchoring him. Jasmine steps closer, her words sharp enough to pierce through every camera, every broadcast, every living room in America. So I ask you, my fellow citizens, can the power of propaganda ever outweigh the power of truth? Or will truth, no matter how buried, always claw its way to the light? The echo of Jasmine's words still hangs in the chamber when a voice erupts from across the aisle. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez rises to her feet, her fist clenched, her voice cutting through the noise like a clarion call. She is right. This isn't just about Donald Trump's lies, this is about every American family betrayed by his corruption. Her words ignite sparks. A ripple of cheers breaks out among Democrats, staffers pound the desks in support, and the cameras seize on the image of two women, Crockett and AOC, standing side by side, the embodiment of defiance. But almost immediately, the counterstrike comes. Jordan leans forward, his trademark sneer twisting his face. He taps the microphone and shakes his head, his voice dripping with contempt. This isn't a courtroom, it's a circus. And Congresswoman Crockett is playing the lead clown. A performance designed for the cameras, for social media likes, not for truth. Laughter erupts from a pocket of Trump loyalists. But it's brittle, uneasy, too loud to be real. Jasmine doesn't move, her stare fixed. But AOC slams her hand against the desk, silencing the mockery. You think fighting for justice is a performance? Tell that to the officers beaten on January 6th. Tell that to the families who lost their children to drugs sold on Ross Ulbricht's Silk Road. If this is a performance, then history will remember us as the only ones who had the courage to act. Her words strike like lightning, and suddenly the gallery splits, half cheering, half jeering, the nose so sharp it rattles glass. And then, in the middle of the chaos, something unexpected happens. Liz Cheney, once a pariah among her own party for defying Trump, slowly rises from her seat. The chamber falls into a stunned hush. She doesn't grandstand. She doesn't raise her voice. She simply nods once, firmly, in Jasmine's direction. But that single gesture carries the weight of an earthquake. Cameras zoom instantly, capturing the fissure. A Republican, daughter of a former vice president, giving silent approval to Trump's fiercest accuser. The look on Trump's face hardens, his lips pressed into a thin line. His fortress, long thought impenetrable, suddenly shows cracks. Reporters scribble furiously. Cheney backs Crockett. Social media explodes clips of her nod play on a loop, dissected, shared, weaponized. For Trump's allies, it's betrayal. For his enemies, it's vindication. For the American public, it's proof that even within his walls, loyalty is no longer absolute. Jordan pounds the desk, shouting about traitors, his words drowned in the din. Green screeches again, pointing at Cheney, calling her a backstabber, her voice shrill and desperate. But the chamber has shifted. The spectacle is no longer Trump's show. It is Jasmine's battlefield. She turns slowly, surveying the chaos, her expression calm but fierce, the fire in her eyes unwavering. When the truth is this heavy, she says, voice rising above the storm, it doesn't just fracture lies, it fractures the foundations built on them. And when allies begin to defect, how strong is a king without his court? Trump slams his fist against the desk, his face flushed crimson, his voice roaring back to life. I freed patriots, not criminals, men who stood up for their country, and weak leaders betrayed it. They weren't thugs, they were heroes. They fought for America. His words ricochet through the chamber, carried with the same raw fury he once wielded on rally stages, but here it sounds different, defensive, almost desperate. The chamber reacts instantly, gasps, jeers, applause, chaos collides in a storm of no's. Some Republicans clap frantically, their eyes darting nervously to the cameras, while Democrats sit rigid, jaws clenched in fury. Trump leans forward, pointing across the chamber, his finger trembling with rage. You call them criminals, then you call half of America criminals. You spit on patriots who love this country. Jasmine doesn't flinch. Her voice cracks like a whip, sharp and merciless. Patriots, you freed predators, not patriots. You unleashed men who beat police officers with flagpoles, who smeared blood on the walls of this very building. You call drug lords and fraudsters patriots. You call child traffickers patriots. No, Mr. Trump, patriots build this country. Predators break it. The chamber gasps again. Louder this time, the words slicing through the pretense like broken glass. Trump recoils for a second, then fires back, spitting venom. You're nothing but a mouthpiece, a loud, angry puppet who doesn't know what real Americans want. Jasmine steps forward, her eyes blazing, her voice rising above the cacophony. Real Americans, let me tell you about real Americans. The grandmother who stood 8 hours in the Texas heat just to cast her ballot because her polling station was shut down. The black teenager who was handcuffed and jailed for a crime he didn't commit, while men you freed walked free. The immigrant father deported for a parking ticket, while drug kingpins you pardon flew home to their mansions. Her words are not just an argument, they are an indictment, a searing wound reopened before the entire nation. Trump shakes his head violently, shouting into the microphone. Lies, fake sob stories, I put America first. His voice booms, but it trembles underneath. The crowd outside roars louder, chants of justice, justice, shaking the glass panes as if the people themselves are pounding on the walls of power. The clash builds like thunder, each word striking like lightning. Trump, red-faced, shouting about loyalty, borders, and strength. Jasmine, unyielding, her words laced with pain and fire, exposing the cracks in his myth of patriotism. The chamber feels less like a debate and more like a battlefield, truth and lies colliding in a storm that refuses to break. Finally, Jasmine leans in, her voice dropping to a near whisper, yet sharper than any scream. So tell me, America, whose definition of patriotism will you accept? The predators hiding behind flags, or the people who bleed to keep our democracy alive? Outside the Capitol, the protests swell like a tidal wave crashing against stone. Police form barricades, shields up, batons raised, but the crowd keeps pressing forward. On one side, Trump loyalists scream USA, USA, waving banners and portraits of him like a prophet returned. On the other, thousands chant lock him up. In thunderous unison, their fists pumping the air, their faces streaked with fury and tears. The two chants collide in the humid air like clashing armies, so loud it rattles the glass windows of the chamber itself. Helicopters circle overhead, their searchlights cutting across the night sky, capturing the chaos for live television. Then the cameras shift. Networks across America cut to a different scene, families of victims standing in front of microphones, their grief spilling right into the nation's living rooms. A mother, clutching the photo of her son who overdosed on fentanyl shipped through Silk Road, her voice cracking as she sobs, he gave my boy's killer his freedom. A police widow, her hands trembling as she reads through a crumpled paper. My husband never came home. After January 6th, the man who beat him walked free because Donald Trump decided he was a patriot. A young woman, barely 20, recounting the night she was attacked by a man pardoned for assault, her tears streaming as she whispers, he should never have been released. Their pain is unfiltered, unpolished, impossible to ignore. Across the nation, living rooms fall silent. Even hardened commentators swallow hard, their voices breaking as they try to narrate. Hashtags shift again. Hashtag Voices of the Broken begins trending. Millions sharing the testimonies, flooding timelines with faces of the forgotten. Inside the chamber, Jasmine holds the file against her chest like a shield, her voice steady but heavy with sorrow. She doesn't shout, she doesn't need to. The weight of those stories carries her words farther than volume ever could. This is who he abandoned, she says, pointing toward the screens showing the grieving families. These are the lives he traded away for loyalty, for money, for power. The chamber falls into a stunned hush. Even some of Trump's defenders look shaken, their eyes darting to the floor. The bravado that once filled the air is punctured, replaced by something darker: guilt, unease, a creeping recognition of complicity. Trump shifts in his chair, his face pale beneath the hot lights, his hands gripping the desk as if it were the only anchor keeping him from drowning. Jasmine takes a step closer to the microphone, her tone soft but merciless. You call it mercy, I call it betrayal. You promised to protect America, but instead you abandoned its most vulnerable. You let predators walk free, while their victims were left with only gravestones, scars, and silence. Her voice quivers with contained rage, the chamber hanging on every word. And as the chants outside grow into a single booming demand, shaking the Capitol to its foundation, the question ripples across every home, every street, every conscience in America: will this nation ignore the voices of the broken, or finally answer their cry for justice? The chamber is already tense when Trump suddenly explodes, his fist slamming against the desk with a crack that echoes like a gunshot. His face is crimson, sweat glistening under the hot lights, his voice a thunderous roar that shakes the rafters. You are trash, he screams at Jasmine, spittle flying from his lips, his finger jabbing toward her like a dagger. The words reverberate across the chamber, shocking even his own allies, a raw insult without veneer, a man stripped of composure. Gasps erupt from the audience, some recoil in horror, others erupt in chaotic shouts. Democrats pound their desks in outrage. Republicans yell in defense, and for a moment, the chamber feels like it's collapsing under the sheer weight of fury. The gavel slams again and again, but the sound is drowned in the storm. Reporters scribble furiously, cameras zooming in, catching every twitch of Trump's face, every flicker of Jasmine's eyes. But she does not flinch. She rises slowly, her gaze locked on him, her voice steady and sharp enough to cut steel. Deader trash than a traitor, her words land like a lightning strike, sending a shockwave through the room. For a second, everything freezes. The insult thrown, the retaliation returned, the chamber caught in suspended disbelief. Then chaos detonates. Gasps explode into shouts. Some lawmakers leap to their feet, pointing, screaming, fists slamming desks. Others sit stunned, hands covering mouths, as though unable to believe what they've just witnessed. The gallery erupts in a frenzy, the split between Trump loyalists and Justice supporters sharper than ever. Outside, the chants grow louder, syncopating with the chaos inside, a storm battering the Capitol from every side. Trump's face contorts, his voice cracking as he tries to regain control. "You dare call me a traitor? I am the savior of this nation." His words tumble out like broken glass, harsh, frantic, his once calculated bluster unraveling into raw desperation. His hand slams the desk again, veins bulging on his forehead, eyes wide with fury. Jasmine steps closer, the file still clutched in her hand like a weapon of truth. Her voice doesn't rise, instead it drops lower, cutting deeper. "You betrayed America when you freed predators and called them patriots. You betrayed families who will never see their loved ones again. You betrayed the oath of your office, and no insult, no scream, will change that truth." The chamber is no longer just noise, it is an emotional battlefield. Lawmakers wipe tears, others shake with rage, and across the country, families watching at home clutch one another tighter. Social media explodes in real time, clips of "better trash than a traitor" spreading like wildfire, a phrase instantly etched into the political lexicon. Trump leans back, his chest heaving, his mouth opening but no words coming out. The roar outside grows deafening, voices unified in a chant that rattles the very stone. "Justice, justice, justice." And Jasmine, her voice carrying above the storm, delivers the line that sears into history. At what point does anger turn into revelation, and when it does, will America finally open its eyes? The chamber is still vibrating from the fury of insults when Jasmine slowly raises her hand, holding not the thick black file this time, but a single sealed envelope. The cameras zoom in, catching the glint of an official seal, the kind that makes the air in the room grow heavier. She speaks with deliberate calm, her voice steady as if she knows exactly how devastating what comes next will be. Inside this envelope are prison transfer documents. They concern Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted trafficker, the partner of Jeffrey Epstein. Gasps ripple like aftershocks, lawmakers lean forward, journalists drop pens onto notepads, the chamber stunned into silence. Jasmine continues, her words slicing through the thick air. "Maxwell, a convicted sex offender, was granted an extraordinary waiver, moved from a high-security facility into a minimum-security prison. A transfer against policy, a transfer granted only because of one man's intervention." She lifts the document high for all to see, the seal flashing under the lights. That man was Donald Trump. Trump jerks upright, his face draining of color, his mouth opening in disbelief. "That's Ali," he shouts, but the tone betrays him, his voice cracks, raw, exposed. Jasmine doesn't even look at him. She lays the document flat on the desk, reading from it line by line, the words heavy as lead. The order signed, the waiver approved, the condition clear. Maxwell received special treatment after cooperating with federal officials and, in recorded interviews, publicly describing Trump as a perfect gentleman. The chamber erupts, gasps turn into shouts, the press gallery explodes into motion, reporters shouting over one another, camera flashes strobing like lightning. Even Trump's closest allies, Jordan, Green, shift uneasily in their seats, their eyes darting anywhere but at the evidence before them. Liz Cheney leans forward, stone-faced, her nod sharper now, a silent verdict that slices deeper than words. Jasmine steps closer to the mic, her voice rising above the chaos. "So let's be very clear. While victims cried for justice, while families begged for closure, Donald Trump protected a sex trafficker to protect himself. He sold justice in exchange for loyalty. He shielded a predator because she shielded him. The room shakes with fury. A woman in the gallery shouts "monster" before breaking down into sobs. Outside, the chants of justice, justice. Crescendo, thunder rolling against the stone walls. Even those who came to defend Trump look unsettled, their faces pale, the certainty in their eyes cracked wide open. Trump grips the desk, his knuckles white, but the cameras zoom mercilessly on his expression. It's no longer the smirk of control, no longer the roar of defiance. It's the face of a man cornered, exposed, his fortress breached. Jasmine doesn't shout. Her voice lowers, every syllable cold as steel, every word weighted with the fury of a nation betrayed. How much betrayal can a nation stomach before it finally says enough? The roar of the chamber still echoes in the nation's ears, but behind closed doors, in the shadowed corners of Capitol Hill, the mood is very different. Deep in a private strategy room, away from cameras, Trump's inner circle huddles around a long mahogany table. The air smells of sweat and panic. Phones buzz non-stop, screens lighting up with headlines. Crockett drops Maxwell bombshell. Trump exposed in prison transfer scandal. Trump paces furiously, his face a mask of rage and fear. He slams a fist onto the table, rattling glasses of water. She's lying. She's making it up. Why aren't you people fighting harder? That the room stays tense, his advisors exchanging uneasy glances instead of answers. For the first time, loyalty looks fragile. One aide scrolls nervously through Twitter, showing him trending hashtags, hashtag Crockett Truth, hashtag Traitor-in-Chief. Another whispers that donors are calling, furious, demanding explanations. A third admits that polls are sliding within hours, swing voters recoiling at the images of grieving families and the Maxwell documents. Trump explodes again. Fake news will crush her with propaganda. That his voice cracks mid-sentence, betraying desperation. Across town, GOP leaders meet in hushed side rooms, the veneer of unity fracturing. Whispers ripple. He's becoming a liability. She cornered him too easily. To silence, the Maxwell file to damaging, some urge doubling down, others quietly consider cutting ties. The fear isn't just about Trump's scandals, it's about their own futures tethered to his unraveling empire. Leaks drip almost immediately. Anonymous sources feed journalists scraps of whispered doubt. Politico flashes a headline within minutes. Republicans question Trump's viability after Crockett clash. CNN reports that senior GOP officials privately admitted the silence was catastrophic. The fortress begins to crack, not from Jasmine's blows alone, but from the weight of allies deserting their posts. Meanwhile, in the war room, Trump's lawyers argue among themselves. One insists they can discredit Jasmine with lawsuits. Another warns that discovery will only drag more skeletons into the open. Trump cuts them off, his voice shaking. I don't care. Sue her. Threaten her. Destroy her. But even his legal team hesitates because they know the documents she revealed aren't fabrications. They've seen them before. The camera lingers on their faces, men and women who once shouted his praises now staring at the table, afraid to meet his eyes. Outside the closed doors, staffers whisper in hallways, journalists circle like sharks, and America watches with a mix of shock and grim fascination. The aura of invincibility that once cloaked Trump seems to be peeling away, piece by piece, in real time. Trump finally slumps into a chair, his hand gripping his forehead, muttering under his breath, "They can't take me down." They can't, but even as he repeats it, the doubt bleeds through. His fortress is no longer under siege from without, it is collapsing from within. And the question pounding in every heart, inside and outside those locked rooms, is this what happens when a fortress begins to crumble from within, and the king can no longer command his own court? The chamber, still reverberating with tension from Trump's crumbling defense, suddenly shifts as Jasmine takes a long breath. She places the thick file of pardons aside, no longer holding it like a shield, but as if to say the raw truth does not always come from paper, it comes from flesh and memory. The cameras close in, catching the change in her eyes. They are not just fierce now. They are wet, reflecting a pain carried for decades. Her voice breaks the silence, low at first but steady, each word echoing against marble walls. I know what injustice feels like, I lived it. She doesn't speak as a politician, she speaks as a survivor. The screen fades into a montage of her past grainy images of childhood in South Dallas, Her family crowded into a one-bedroom home where the roof leaked when it rained. Her mother working 2 jobs, her father's voice low with exhaustion after a 14-hour shift, the fridge half empty, the bills piled high. Young Jasmine sitting at a school desk, clutching a worn-out pencil, listening to teachers say she'd never make it out. Her voice narrates over the images. I grew up in poverty. I grew up in a world that told me every door was locked before I even reached for the handle. The chamber leans in. Even her fiercest opponents grow quiet. She continues, her voice sharper now, carrying both the weight of memory and the steel of defiance. I watched my neighbors stop and frisked for no reason. I saw woes my age dragged away in handcuffs for crimes they didn't commit, while the real criminals wore suits and walked free. I marched with mothers who buried sons lost not to gangs, but to a justice system that saw their skin as guilt. Gasps ripple through the audience. Some lawmakers wipe their eyes, others bow their heads. A woman in the gallery clutches her chest, whispering, "That was my son." Jasmine steadies herself, her voice swelling with conviction. That is why I stand here today, because I am not just reading names from a file. I am carrying the weight of every family broken by injustice. I am carrying the voices of every child told they don't matter. I am carrying my own scars, and I refuse to let them be silenced by a man who thinks power is a substitute for truth. The chamber erupts not with chaos this time, but with applause, with tears, with the electric hum of something bigger than politics. Reporters capture the moment, headlines already drafting themselves. Crockett turns pain into power. Even outside, the chants falter for a beat, as if the crowd itself is listening, absorbing the vulnerability turned into fire. Trump sits frozen, his face unreadable, unable to weaponize this moment. For the first time, he looks small, not silenced by evidence, but by humanity itself. And Jasmine, her voice trembling but unbreakable, asks the question that pierces the nation's conscience. Can personal pain become a nation's strength, or will we keep burying it until the whole country breaks? The moment Jasmine's words fade, the nation reacts like a body jolted by electricity. Screens across America light up with breaking banners. Crockett's testimony rocks Capitol. Cable news interrupts regular programming to show live polls flashing red and blue. The numbers move like a tidal wave. Where Trump once held a steady lead among undecideds, the graph plunges, Jasmine's favorability soaring in real time. Anchors gasp on air as percentages flipped in ways unseen since Watergate. This is historic, one whispers, in diners across Ohio, bars in Pennsylvania, living rooms in Georgia. People sit glued to televisions, some shaking their heads, others whispering, "She's right." Even in deep red counties, murmurs grow. Clips of Jasmine's "better trash than a traitor" line rack up millions of views within hours. TikTok and Twitter flooded with edits painting her as a fearless warrior. Hashtags surge. Hashtag Crockett Truth. Hashtag Justice for America. Hashtag Traitor-in-Chief. Meanwhile, MAGA rallies, once choreographed spectacles of loyalty, descend into chaos. In Florida, Trump supporters clash with each other. One man shouts into a megaphone, "She's lying," while another counters, "But what about the documents? What about Maxwell?" In Arizona, a woman in a red hat rips off her Trump flag, throwing it on the ground. Reporters capture the scene, the footage playing on repeat, a base once unbreakable now splintering before the world's eyes. Inside conservative talk shows, the cracks are visible. Some hosts double down, calling Jasmine a fraud, while others shift uneasily, hedging their baits with lines like, "If true, these allegations are concerning, the hedging is enough to send shockwaves." Loyalists sense it. The empire of certainty is crumbling. Back in the chamber, Jasmine remains still, her hands folded, watching events unfold as if she knows history is bending in this moment. Her vulnerability, once a personal wound, now becomes a weapon sharper than any headline. Reporters describe it as the Crockett effect, the power of lived pain to shift the moral compass of a nation. Even her critics admit off-camera that she has become the face of something bigger than herself. Trump, however, rages behind the scenes. Clips leak from his private war room, him curling papers against the wall, shouting at aides, screaming about betrayal. The sound bites hit the news cycle like bombs. They're weak, they're all weak. His image as the unflappable strongman fractures further, the cracks too visible to hide. And across America, people ask themselves the same haunting question: If his own base begins to doubt, if even his iron circle begins to splinter, what remains of his power? The tide is no longer creeping, it is crashing, sweeping away the myth of invincibility he has carried for years. Jasmine looks into the camera, her voice calm, deliberate, carrying through every living room. America is watching, the people are deciding. The question is simple. When the people change their minds, can power survive? Trump slams both fists onto the podium, his chest heaving, his voice a booming thunder meant to drown the chamber. This woman is not a hero, she is the enemy of the people. His words roar through the hall, reverberating against marble walls, spilling into cameras that broadcast live to millions. He points directly at Jasmine, his finger shaking with rage. She hates you, she hates America, she hates freedom. And if she wins, everything we've built will burn to the ground. A pocket of his base in the gallery erupts into cheers, clapping, chanting his name. But it is smaller now, thinner, less certain. Their voices don't surge with the same fire. They sound defensive, strained, as if trying to convince themselves. The cameras catch at the hollow roar of a movement shrinking in real time. Jasmine steps forward, unflinching. Her face is calm, her stance steady, the contrast to his fury striking like light against darkness. She doesn't shout over him, she waits until his voice breaks into silence, until the chamber is forced to choose which voice it will hear. Then she leans into the microphone, her voice low but cutting like a blade. The enemy isn't me. The enemy is corruption. The enemy is a system that shields predators, pardons fraudsters, and abandons victims. The chamber freezes, her words slice through his theatrics, laying bare the truth. Trump shakes his head violently, shouting again. Lies, all lies, I gave America safety. His face twists, his gestures wild, the performance of a man trying to summon a storm that no longer answers his call. Outside, the chants collide. Lock him up. Against USA. But even the cameras outside show the shift. The crowd on Trump's side has thinned, cracks widening in a base once ironclad. Protesters on the other side grow louder, their chants unify, shaking barricades as police struggle to contain the surging tide. Inside, lawmakers lean forward, captivated. The split is no longer partisan, it is moral. AOC claps fiercely. Liz Cheney folds her arms, nodding. Even some Republicans avert their eyes from Trump's meltdown, unwilling to defend the unraveling spectacle. Jasmine lifts her hand, not in anger, but in defiance. You call me the enemy of the people, Mr. Trump, but the people are watching, and they see the truth. Fear can shout, fear can lie, fear can threaten, but courage does not bow. The chamber explodes, cheers, gasps, pounding desks. Trump glares, but his words falter. For the first time in years, his weapon of fear looks powerless against a single voice of conviction. And as the camera zooms in on Jasmine's unwavering gaze, the question reverberates across the nation: can fear still control, and courage refuses to bow? The chamber is still buzzing with Jasmine's last words when she suddenly raises, new folder thinner than the black file of pardons, but more dangerous, its edges marked with the seal of the Federal Election Commission. She lets the silence stretch, eyes locked on Trump, until the room falls still. Then, her voice strikes like a thunderclap. You call yourself the defender of America. But the truth is, you sold it, and I have the receipts. She opens the folder, pulling out a document with bold black lettering, reading it aloud with precision. Trevor Milton, founder of Nikola Motors, convicted of fraud after scamming investors with a fake electric truck so fake, they rolled it down a hill just to shoot a commercial. Months before his sentencing, he donated $1.8 million to Donald Trump's campaign. Gasps rip through the chamber. Heads whip toward Trump. The cameras zoom in on his face, catching the twitch in his jaw, the sweat pooling at his temple. He grips the desk, his knuckles white, as though holding on could somehow keep the walls from collapsing. Jasmine flits to the next page, her voice cutting deeper. And weeks later, Mr. Trump pardoned him. He walked free. Millions stolen from American investors. Erased, in exchange for his money. The chamber freezes. Not a cough, not a whisper, only the rapid click of cameras as reporters capture history unraveling in real time. Some lawmakers cover their mouths, others mutter in disbelief. Even Trump's allies shift uncomfortably, their eyes darting away, unwilling to meet the truth head-on. Trump lurches toward the mic, his voice cracking. That's fake news, lies. I didn't know, but he stumbles, cutting himself off mid-sentence, unable to finish. His words, once weapons, now sound brittle, broken. Jasmine doesn't raise her voice, she doesn't need to. Her calm is more devastating than rage. She holds up the check itself, the ink signature glowing under the lights. This is not fake news, this is your signature. This is your corruption. You didn't pardon a patriot, you pardoned your donor. You didn't serve the people, you sold them out. The eruption is instant. Gasps turn into shouts. Democrats pound their desks in fury, while Republicans sit stone still, the fracture lines widening into gaping cracks. The press gallery is chaos. Journalists shouting questions, headlines already flashing across screens. Trump sold pardons for cash. Outside, the chants swell into a deafening roar, a tidal wave slamming against the barricades. Sold us out. Sold us out. The sound shakes the very windows of the chamber, as if the building itself is groaning under the weight of betrayal. Trump sits back, chest heaving, face pale, his eyes darting like a man searching for an exit that no longer exists. His empire of bravado, built on fear and bluster, crumbles beneath the weight of ink and numbers. Jasmine lowers the document, her voice quiet but lethal, echoing across the chamber and through every television screen in America. What happens when money trails reveal the real motive, when corruption is no longer rumor, but proof inked in your own hand? Trump grips the edge of the desk like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. His mouth opens, words sputtering out in broken fragments. It's not true. He stops, his throat tightening. He reaches for a glass of water, his hand trembling so visibly, at the cameras zoom in, capturing every shake, every drop clinging to the rim. He gulps hard, his atoms apple-botting, but the water only makes the silence louder. Then the chamber erupts. From one corner, the chant begins, low but fierce. Resign, resign. It spreads like wildfire, swelling until the entire room vibrates with it. The sound is deafening, a tidal wave of fury rolling over him, drowning out every feeble attempt to speak. Reporters shout, desks pound, the gallery thunders. America watches, stunned, as a man once defined by his voice is consumed by the roar of others. Trump looks around wildly, his eyes darting, desperate for an ally, but Jim Jordan stares at his desk. Marjorie Taylor Greene's face is pale, her fists clenched but motionless. Even his loyalists are frozen, unwilling to throw themselves onto the fire with him. The isolation is palpable, a fortress reduced to rubble before the world. And then Jasmine rises. She doesn't shout over the no, she commands it. Her fist lifts high into the air, her voice clear, resonant, cutting through the storm like a bell. Justice will prevail. The chamber explodes in response. Cheers, tears, chants colliding into one voice of defiance. For a moment, it feels as if the very foundation of the Capitol trembles, not from division, but from a nation finally rising to its feet. Trump slumps back, his face ashen, his lips pressed tight. He does not speak, he cannot. The cameras capture the image that will defy history, the strong man, silenced. A leader, and none not by whispers in smoke-filled rooms, but by truth spoken aloud, and the courage of one voice refusing to bow. The broadcast cuts to millions of living rooms, to a nation holding its breath, to families asking the same question whispered in studios, classrooms, and crowded streets. Is silence the final confession? The broadcast fades from Trump's trembling silence into a nation on fire. A montage sweeps across the screen, streets filled with protesters, banners waving against a sky split by sirens and helicopter lights. In New York, crowds chant Jasmine's name, fists raised. In Texas, families gather in candlelight vigils, holding photos of loved ones lost, 2 men Trump set free. Across the Midwest, TV screens flicker in diners and bars, the words Crockett crushed Trump scrolling in bold headlines. Newspapers roll off the presses before dawn. The silence that shook America. Crockett's reckoning. End of an era. Talk shows split into 2 worlds, one hailing her as the new face of courage, the other spinning frantic narratives of conspiracy. The divide is raw, the fracture visible, but one truth is undeniable. America has been shaken to its core. Then the cameras cut to the Capitol steps. Families of victims stand in clusters, some still clutching framed photographs, others wiping away tears. A widow steps forward, her voice breaking as she whispers into the mic, "You gave my husband his dignity back." A mother holds Jasmine's hand, pressing it to her chest. "You gave my son's death meaning." Their gratitude is quiet, but it carries the weight of justice long denied. And then Jasmine emerges, the heavy wooden doors swing open, and the crowd outside erupts into a deafening roar. Phones rise into the air, chants thunder, "Crockett, Crockett, justice, justice." She walks down the steps slowly, her head held high, every stride steady despite the chaos swirling around her. The camera captures her silhouette against the floodlights, the file of evidence still clutched in her hand, a symbol now, not just of Trump's corruption, but of a fight larger than him. Reporters swarm, microphones shoved forward, questions shouted like gunfire. But Jasmine doesn't stop for them. She pauses only once, raising her fist to the sky. The crowd answers with a roar so loud it rattles windows blocks away. Inside studios, pundits whisper in awe, "This is bigger than politics, this feels like a movement." And across the nation, people sit forward, wrestling with a question that cannot be dodged. For in her triumph lies a deeper wound, a fractured country, split but awakening, forced to ask itself what kind of nation it wants to be. And as Jasmine disappears into the sea of supporters, the screen fades to black, leaving one final question hanging in the air: what does victory look like in a fractured nation? That night, as the chants outside fade into the distance, Jasmine sits alone in her office, the roar of victory replaced by a heavy silence. On the desk before her lies the same thick file, its pages marked with names that haunt her dreams. She leans back, closing her eyes, and for the first time, the weight crashes down. The hate mail, the death threats, the late nights when her phone buzzes with warnings that her address has leaked online, the whispered fears of her family who beg her to step back before it's too late. Her reflection stares back at her from the window, lit by the glow of flashing cameras still lingering outside. She looks tired, more human than the fearless warrior the world has seen, but she doesn't turn away. Because with the exhaustion comes something else, resolve. In her mind, she sees the faces of those who stand with her. The grandmother in Alabama who pressed a trembling hand into hers and said, "You are our voice." The teenager in Chicago who wrote, "Because of you, I believe justice is possible." The immigrant mother in El Paso who whispered through tears, "Don't stop, we need you." These voices steady her. They remind her that she does not carry this weight alone. Every threat, every insult, every scar is balanced by the hope she now represents to millions who have been ignored, silenced, erased. She realizes the cost of justice is not measured in comfort, but in sacrifice, and she is willing to pay it. Jasmine turns back to the file, her hand pressing firmly against its cover as if anchoring herself to the cause. Her voice, barely above a whisper, carries the force of an oath. "I will not bow, not now, not ever." And as the screen fades, the question lingers like a blade against the nation's conscience: who carries the weight of justice? And the fight is endless. The chamber is silent, yet electric. Every camera in America is trained on Jasmine Crockett as she rises one final time. The thick file rests closed before her, not discarded, but complete. She places both hands on the podium, her voice low but steady, a flame that refuses to flicker. No president should be above the law. No community should be below its protection. The words cut through the air, simple yet seismic. They echo against marble walls, echo across television screens, echo inside the hearts of millions who have waited too long to hear them spoken aloud. Trump sits slumped in his chair, silent, his once defiant glare reduced to a hollow stare. The contrast is striking, one voice diminished, another ascending. The chamber feels suspended in time, every breath held as Jasmine presses forward. "We must choose," she declares, her voice rising now, fueled by the weight of history pressing against her shoulders. "Do we want a nation ruled by fear or by justice? Do we want leaders who sell freedom to the highest bidder, or leaders who will defend it no matter the cost?" Her words strike like hammer blows, punctuated by the thunder of her conviction. The crowd in the gallery leaps to its feet, the sound of applause crashing like a wave. Outside, the chants merge into one unstoppable roar, a symphony of voices demanding the dawn of something new. Reporters shout over one another, their pens flying, knowing they are witnessing not just politics, but history bending before their eyes. Jasmine raises her fist high, her final words ringing like a verdict. America will not bow to fear. America will rise for freedom. Justice will prevail because justice must prevail. The chamber erupts. Applause thunders, cheers shake the rafters, and even across fractured screens in divided households, a collective shiver runs through the nation. The duel is over. Trump sits in silence. Jasmine stands in triumph not for herself, but for a country forced to confront its reflection. And as the lights fade, leaving only the echo of applause, one question lingers like a drumbeat in the American conscience when the lights go out. Whose side will history take? Fear or freedom? True justice is never handed down from power. It is demanded, fought for, and protected by those brave enough to stand against corruption. Jasmine's fight reminds us that silence in the face of injustice is complicity, but courage, even when vulnerable, can move an entire nation. In our own lives, we face smaller battles, moments where fear tempts us to stay quiet. Yet it is in those moments that integrity matters most. So I ask you, when your chance comes to choose between fear and justice, which side will you stand on? Thank you for watching until this moment and for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support means everything. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what moved you most in this story. Together, our voices make a difference.